Will Max Verstappen win the 2024 World Drivers' Championship? From what looked like an absolute certainty at the start of the season, a fourth championship for Verstappen is no longer 100% guaranteed. One of the main reasons for this, if you haven't been following F1 for the past few months, is because of Red Bull's sudden and drastic drop in performance that has been noticeable since the Miami Grand Prix. In this episode, we'll talk about the top 4 possibilities for Red Bull's drastic decline, and stay tuned for number 1, because that's the possibility which nobody has even talked about yet. But before we run through our top 4, help support this channel by hitting the like and subscribe buttons below. All done. Thanks. Now let's get started. Possible reasons for Red Bull's sudden decline. Number 4. Red Bull are sandbagging. At first, I thought this might be happening. That Red Bull were sandbagging to make the season more entertaining, to please the commercial rights holders and fans, and put on hold any attempts by the FIA to put in measures to slow them down. But for this to be the case, there were certain races in the calendar that Red Bull would have made sure they won: Austria, Spa and Zandvoort, Mac's home race. The fact they lost these races, especially Zandvoort, by such a huge margin, means this theory isn't likely and something else is going on. Which brings us to the next theory. Number 3. Adrian Newey leaving. Earlier in the year, it was reported that Adrian Newey would be leaving Red Bull, with speculation rife that he'd be joining Sir Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari. We now know he'll in fact be joining Aston Martin to help deliver Lawrence Stroll and the team their first championship in the modern era. But people are also speculating that it's Adrian Newey's absences or exclusions from Red Bull's technical meetings that may now be having an effect on their car's overall performance. This would be plausible if the advantage Red Bull had in the early rounds of the season didn't suddenly evaporate in the space of 2 weeks. That's the time that elapsed between the Grand Prix in China on the 21st of April, where Max won by 13+ seconds, to the Grand Prix in Miami on the 5th of May, where Max lost to McLaren's Lando Norris. Now, some fans might say that the reason Max no longer had an advantage in Miami was because McLaren brought a big update package to the race which improved their car's performance. No doubt this is partially true, but ever since Miami we haven't just seen Red Bull's advantage to McLaren disappear, we've seen the performance gap to other teams shrink as well. Which is why people in the F1 world believe something else is going on, and this leads us on to our second possibility. Number 2. Asymmetric braking. During the international broadcast of the Free Practice 2 session at the Hungarian Grand Prix, Spanish F1 pundit Antonio Lobato claimed that Red Bull's drop in performance was a result of the FIA questioning the legality of some of the parts on the RB20. His exact words were, "I was told from 2 different teams that they're convinced that the FIA told Red Bull to change some parts," to which his colleague responded, "The drop of performance is because some team found out something illegal?" Lobato concluded, "Yes, and the FIA confirmed it and told them to retire it." We all saw the terrible race Max had in Hungary, where he was cursing over the radio and complaining that his car wouldn't turn. This is the sort of thing a driver would experience if they no longer had use of asymmetric braking, which allows the forces applied to the brakes of the wheels on a given axle to be different and helps with car rotation, as one wheel would be turning slower than the other and thus create a pivot effect. Asymmetric braking also has the added benefit of decreasing tyre wear, and you may have noticed that the ability to preserve his tyres is a skill Max seems to have also suddenly lost since China, with Norris now able to manage his tyres much better than Max can. In fact, in some races, Max's ability to manage his tyre wear now seems to be on par with Mercedes and Ferrari. It's almost as if Red Bull have taken a step back, and that's typically a clear sign that something has been removed from a car. However, there are still some things that don't feel right to me, and this brings me on to the last reason why Red Bull have lost so much pace. Number 1. Horner wants Max out. Everyone should be familiar with Horner's sexting scandal that made headlines just before the season started. I've made a few videos about it myself, but along with the accusations, there were also stories about a power struggle at Red Bull involving Christian Horner, Dr. Helmut Marko, and the Austrian minority shareholders of the Red Bull company. Rumour has it that Horner wanted to take control of the Red Bull racing team with help from the Thai majority shareholder of Red Bull. The Austrian owners and Marko were opposed to this, and it's believed that news of the internal investigation of the accusations against Horner was leaked to the press in order to force Horner to resign. Most fans know the story of the whole Horner affair by now, but the most important part in relation to Red Bull's drop in performance are the roles Jos Verstappen and Helmut Marko played in it. Verstappen Sr. openly called for Horner to resign, saying the team would implode if he did otherwise, while Marko is alleged to have been the individual that leaked the saucy WhatsApp messages between Horner and his PA to the press. I tell you all this to show you there's an obvious split in the Red Bull team. There's two sides, so to say, and Max Verstappen picked one when he refused to publicly back Horner, but did back Helmut Marko when he told the media that if Marko left Red Bull, he would too. So what's this all got to do with Red Bull's drop in performance, you might be asking? Well, think about things from Horner's point of view. He's fighting for his very survival, and the Verstappens, including Max, have picked the opposing side. There's no way in hell Horner would now want Max around for the long term, especially if he's winning more championships and gaining more and more influence within Red Bull, so that Helmut Marko and his buddies can have another crack at getting rid of him sometime in the future. But Horner can't fire Max, and he knows this, but he can take away his goodies. You know, the things that aren't quite to the spirit of the rules, as Horner himself likes to say, and make the car go so much faster than everybody else's. Could be just a simple phone call to his buddy, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, to tell him that his inspectors might want to look for an asymmetric braking valve at the rear of the Red Bull car. Then, voila! Just like that, Max is no longer finishing races 20 seconds ahead of everyone else, but back in the pack, having to battle with other frontrunners. And that's exactly what we've seen, Max having to fight for wins again in a car that is sometimes fastest, joint fastest or second fastest in a race weekend. And now winning isn't coming so easily as it was in 2023, which has fueled speculation that Max may look for pastures new if Red Bull produce a rubbish car in 2026. This would suit Horner just fine. He'd have dealt with the Max problem and wouldn't have implicated himself as the reason for Max's departure in the process. So what can Max expect now? Well, there won't be any more ingenious driving aids for Max or clever tricks that may or may not be within the regulations. Red Bull are going to follow the rules from now on, and Max's only hope is that the engineers at Red Bull come up with something legal that can restore their advantage over the rest of the F1 grid. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to help support this channel by hitting the like and subscribe buttons below. Till next time.